Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug.Show. My name's Doug Cunnington, and today I'm super excited. I get to talk to one of my buddies. I've known him for a long time, but we actually haven't talked very much until pretty recently. So I'm going to be interviewing Alex Drew, and we're going to go over all the details about aged premium domains and why they can give you a little bit of an advantage if you're building a website. So Alex, pleasure to have you on. How's it going today?
Yeah, going great. Thanks for having me. Awesome. Anyone who's watching this, we've been sponsoring, with a lot of enthusiasm, your podcast for about 1.5 years at least, I believe right now. And it's been a pleasure. And funny thing is, when you focus on building a business, you do not have much time to actually put yourself out there, which I somehow regret because it goes both ways sometimes. So now that we're doing this, I think it will add great value because sometimes I just view myself as the person who is better able to articulate whatever the vision of the business is. So again, thanks for having me.
You got it. Yeah, you guys have been great partners and your team's been awesome to work with. And I know what you're saying. It's like, do you spend time on the marketing or are you like trying to run the business? And there's always some balance and it's hard to split your time in both ways. So it worked out great for me since we've been able to work together. But yeah, let's talk about Odys just a little bit and about your role. Like I said, we don't know each other super well, so I'm curious about that. And let's start with what you do at Odys, and then we'll get into your background and how you got into this world of websites.
Yeah, so I'm one of the founders, but we actually recently split with my partner, so I completely took over the business. But I'm one of the founders, and somehow I've been, the CEO managing the operations since the very beginning. Something like frontline guy, handling, hiring, firing, managing, building relationships. So sort of like the classical CEO.
Got it. How old is the company?
So the current company, as it is incorporated in Estonia, is I think it's close to 7 years old. Yep. 7 years old. 6.5, 7 years old. But the overall business, domaining business, I think you can find proof of its existence since 2012 or so.
Wow.
As a business that sells domains, because my history goes back to 2005 when it comes to actual building sites, buying domains, but as a business model, it started evolving in 2012 or so.
Got it. That's pretty cool. I mean, that's a dinosaur in internet years. So let's go back to like 2005 or even before. What was your educational background, and then lead us into the 2000 time frame there when you got into websites?
So I've studied history, I studied philosophy, I've done lots of martial arts in my life. So once upon a time, I thought, well, this internet thing is cool. And I believe I've even wrote about this on Facebook. I've asked a question like, when did you build your first website and what tools did you use? And I was the first one to answer my own question. And I believe it was like 2001. I cannot even remember what age was that, like how old was I, but it was 2001 and I was using a piece of software sent to me by a buddy from New York. I think she was a freelancer, called NetObjects Fusion. Fast forward, my first AdSense affiliate website, 2005 or so. And then I've started actively devouring the entire affiliate marketing and internet and making money online thing. And from then I never looked back, and it kind of progressed. I think the first age domain was acquired via servers. Back in the day, it was FreshDrop. It was the first aggregator of domains. I believe it was even before expiredomains.net, which everyone knows of. And ever since, I've basically, all my main projects were built on age domains. I've barely registered any fresh domains, either to invest or to build websites on. So it goes, as you said, dinosaurs years in internet years.
Yeah, that is super old. I am not even familiar with the 2001 tool that you mentioned there, which is weird because I went to school for computer engineering and was around a lot of CS, very nerdy type people that would have been dabbling in that. I don't remember running across it in those years. So that is, super interesting. So 2005, you started getting into it. Sounds like you were obsessed. Did you ever have like a corporate gig, or you kind of went directly into internet marketing and websites?
So I was a one-man army. Initially, I learned everything myself. I don't have like a business education per se. I've never like studied, I don't have an MBA or anything. I just learned everything myself, starting with basic accounting, and how to run a business, and then I believe my first company was registered in around 2010. Then I had another one. So different type of jurisdictions until I found like Estonia, which works really well for startups, sort of like the Silicon Valley of Europe, which I decided to establish this particular one and went further from that.
Okay. And before we get into the age domains, one more tangent. Where are you from originally? I can't place the accent.
Yeah, so it's a little bit complicated. My mother is Eastern European, and I've lived in Eastern European countries, Romania, Estonia, all my life, and therefore sort of like my wife is Romania, so I lived quite a bit of time in Romania. So I do speak a little bit of Romania. I do speak a little bit, even a little bit of Russian, like I do speak. I've lived a couple of years in Estonia. I've incorporated there. So yeah, it's sort of like an Eastern European, but I do have some very old relatives from Australia and New Zealand. So you can date back, but I've never got the chance to meet them. So it's sort of like it's a very complicated mix.
Your English is great. I was going to say, I'm always a little bit embarrassed when I talk to, a more international person, especially, European folks tend to know a lot of languages. And most of the time, sadly, your grammar is a little bit better than mine, just because I get a little sloppy with the vernacular around here. But your English is great. So are you ready to transition? Anything else about your background before we move into the age domains and stuff?
No, not really. I'm really fond of anything age domain, so let's deep dive.
All right. So some people have heard of expired domains, and that was kind of my first exposure to, the world of age domains. But what is the difference between an expired domain and an age domain? Is it just a marketing label?
It became a marketing label. Initially, the expired domain kind of better describe the life cycle of a domain. So you register a domain, it goes through some kind of activity, it harnesses all this value, which end up being intrinsic value when you buy it. And then it goes into this expiration and, redemption rate, obviously expiration status from where you can actually get it and buy it. The main difference back in the day, because you have all this kind of terminology, it went up like a contest, like who knows how to better label these type of domains. So you had expired, dropped, you had age domains. Originally, age domains were domains that never dropped. However, and then everyone started asking, like, where do you get them? Well, you get them from auctions. But as of recently, since the whole website industry massively evolved, you have so many other places where you can get them. For instance, I can buy your site, which matches the criteria of an age domain, but it never expired. It never went to auction. So I can take any site. I can buy a ranking site from SERPs from my competitor. I can buy my competitor, and that is an age domain. And it will never go to auctions. No one will ever get the chance. So as a matter of fact, lots of our inventory is around 15 to 20% right now is sites that make good age domains. So in some cases, we will ask them to keep the content on. So the difference is, at least it was, but it somehow evolved. For us, it's now barely a marketing concept. Like we are tagging these domains as aged because they represent, historically they managed to harness all this value. But originally it was an expired domain expired, an age domain never expired. So you managed to get it before it expires. Nowadays, when I talk about an age domain, I talk about an entity which has history, which is old, and which managed throughout all the history to harness, backlinks, authority, traffic, maybe, excellent backlinks. It's still indexed, and it just, has all the value that you can use to your advantage when either launching a site or using it, as a means of growth, as a 301 redirect or whatever the strategy is.
Got it. And you started to answer, part of the next set of questions, like why would someone get an age domain, which we'll just use age domain. I think the market in the industry has matured. So most people are using aged or premium domains versus expired generally. So why do people get these? Can you expand on the value, the SEO value of these domains generally?
So as a matter of fact, I always recommend to view age domains beyond, the SEO, the basic SEO approach. So think about it this way. You operate a business, like a real estate business, and your competitor goes out of business. And obviously, you remember the Moz days when they used to say that links have a ghost period. When you drop a link, you remove a link, but Google will still take into account the value, and it will take time till it diminishes whatever the value that link brought. And same with a business. You have remnants of the brand. It might have traffic, incoming links. So there is value in that. If you can use that strategically to your business, you can take advantage of it. And this is 100% unique to domains. There is no other industry in the world where you can so easily take advantage of the assets of a business that went out of business or went bankrupt or just, closed the shop. With domains, you can snap that right away via auctions or by just making them an offer. So it's really easy. So the way I see someone can, take advantage of the authority of an age domain is simply by considering a purely business application. Like, how do I strategically use Doug's business to promote Odys? Let's assume you go out of business. And then I can take, for instance, your content, your links, your domains, your courses. I can merge it in my business and I can make something. Your user base. We oftentimes are blown away by how much active brand traffic some age domains have. And those people even register on Odys at the marketplace trying to get in touch with a former business, this was owned by a realtor. I'm looking for their services. Can you put me in touch? Like, how do I get them? Do I need to buy the domain? So they're confused, but it means like the old business still gets traction. So if you own a real estate business, it makes sense for you to buy other, age domain real estate age domains and just find means to merge them with your business or strategically use them within your business.
And that makes perfect sense, especially with like Niche Site Project, where I have, something like 500 podcasts out there and over 1,000 videos. Like, there's some intrinsic value. There's traffic coming. People will be looking for it in a, kind of weird, but for years to come, those videos are going to live on for quite a while and people will be looking for whatever I link to at the time. So, okay. Very cool. Well, we're talking about SEO and generally, at least at this point in time, 2023, Google is the SEO that we're usually talking about. So how does Google treat age domains? I think there's probably a range. If a domain was dropped, maybe Google treats it a little differently. If it's a site that was never dropped and it's just sort of an acquisition, I'm sure it's completely different. But can you take us through the range of, reactions that Google might have to something like this?
So at some point in time, everyone started to compete again around terms and technicalities. Is a drop domain worse than an age domain? Where we actually did tests and realized it's not the drop status where the actual original registration date gets reset, but there is one simple question that needs to be answered. How long has the website or domain been down? How long will the website has been indexed from Google? The longer, the harder it will to start getting traction again. That's why, for instance, and since GoDaddy Auctions is the most and the biggest auction platform, and since they monetize, meaning they try to auction their inventory in the redemption grace period, when sometimes you can even get it with a live website in some cases, they auction it at a period of time when the former website is still indexed by Google. So when you take it over really quick and you claim ownership in 7 days, you can even pick up some of the former rankings right away. Whereas with a drop domain, it has to go through a longer period of time. First, the host goes down, then the registry doesn't know how to monetize it. And the only way out is for it to drop from the registry. Then it picks up again. If it doesn't, maybe a lower quality domain, it's available for registration. Someone finds it's registered. So it may be months. So during all this time, Google has enough time to assess that, well, nobody needs this domain. So what if they're not that important? So, obviously it not only leads to a 404, it doesn't even have DNS to solve, and it gets de-indexed from Google. So all the value somehow gets, diminished. So when you relaunch it, there is still value, but it will get much lower action. But if you have a drop domain with 1,000 highly assertive links, it will still end up performing well. Just might take.
Do you have any way to gauge how long it will take? And I think it probably has something to do with how long it was dormant. However, I have heard, one-off anecdotes where someone said, it took like 2 years. Like we did a ton of stuff, and other people say it took 2.5 weeks. And I don't have all the details, but you hear a huge range. And sometimes, if it takes a long time, people won't give it time. So any guidelines on how to judge that?
Well, first of all, observational evidence is not statistical evidence. So if you, just observed your website performing one way, it doesn't mean anything. You have to compare to something else. You have to actually run A/B split test to figure out something. So what I can tell you, for instance, you may have a website that falls into the age domain, sort of like acceptance criteria for us, but it's an actual website. And we say, Doug, we'll list it for sale, but don't remove the website. The actual value in those 15 pages, which are still indexed in Google. Now, one of our members buys it and he starts actively publishing content. And guess what? Sometimes that can rank in 24 hours. In some other cases where it's just an age domain, and with just age domain without a website, we still have this showcase page on where it's a home page that says listed for sale with bits of unique content that keeps it indexed and even ranking for the brand, which might get traffic. And in some other cases, Google will recrawl the website, figure it's a new website. So that might take a week or two. In other cases, you can have both cases, either with an age domain or a website, but they have very little understanding of what they're doing. So they're buying, let's say, niche site project, and they start posting, let's say, surveys related content. Since they figured, well, it's still money related, but it's a completely different topic. Like you haven't covered that before. Plus the backlink profile doesn't power that up. So you will not rank, or you rank, but on the second page, third page, like Google will not rank survey related or how to make money filling surveys content on your website, which may rank, but you can't compete with surveys.com, for instance. So the lack of ability to rank doesn't necessarily correlate with the power of an age domain. So if you do all the things right, like the domain is not abused and you have the topicality in place, the chance of it not ranking is very, very little. Most of the time, there is something that you are not doing right, just like with brand new domains. Whereas with age domains, you just get a kickstart, because of the backlink profile and the fact that it's indexed.
And let's go deeper a little bit into the backlinks. So obviously the backlinks are, it's good from an SEO perspective, which if you want to expand on that just a little, that's fine. But how much value do they retain? And if it's a little redundant from some of the answers before, that's okay. I just want to make sure we go through this. So backlinks, how much value do they retain over time? Because I've seen some 20-year-old domains and some of the links might be 18 years old. So are those any good?
Yeah, in my opinion, there are two main factors which contribute to the value of link. That is the age of the link and the fact if it generates or not traffic. So the older a link has been, crawled by Google, if they are aware of a link that has been live and actively, used for 20 years, it means it holds some value. So I haven't actually read any patent that confirms that, but I strongly believe there is value in that. So oftentimes, as you get the chance to hold an age domain in your portfolio, some of the links might drop. That inevitably happens since the web evolves, right? But some never drop. They're just stuck there. So those links, I believe, hold a ton of value. And the second highly valuable links are those that generate traffic. So if you have a placement on a page that ranks or gets, social traffic, and by clicking on that link, you can get referral traffic. And most of the sites have Google Analytics these days. They are able to see that link generates traffic, and that's a highly valuable link, and the traffic is legit. So I believe the authority of links come mainly from that. And with age domain, obviously, there are some links that you can simply cannot replicate, even with the most expensive, Haro links or outreach links. So in some cases, we even like if our viewers go to searchinternethistory.com, they will see that domain redirects to a blog post. That's an age domain that we managed to get from auctions. And it redirects to a blog post which says how to use archive.org to view the history of a website. So the match was absolutely perfect. If you check the backlink profile of searchinternethistory.com, you will be blown away by the links. I can't remember, but something from TechCrunch to, the highest authority websites on the web. And those links, we managed to get a link from TechCrunch. It was a little bit of, outreach, sort of like they review our startup, but it cost us almost 20 for one link. So imagine this website, it holds a backlink profile worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars if you were to buy each link individually. So again, the age of the link and the ability to generate traffic, I believe these two are really high.
Insane. Yeah, I know what you mean, especially with the outreach agencies that are out there. There's some, pretty complicated stuff that they do, or they have contacts at the various outlets so they can reach out. And usually those links are relevant and good, but it could be just jaw-droppingly expensive to get those links. But with an age domain, you may have, 15 of those or something like that are, 10 years old from, USA Today, New York Times, TechCrunch, and it's pretty much impossible to replicate even if you had unlimited funds, which is kind of crazy to think about. So, all right, before we move on to assessing the domains, is there any other SEO consideration that someone needs to consider?
Well, first of all, and I'd like to contribute to the end of their expired versus drop versus age domain thing. Think about this thing. Does this domain make sense as a means of growth for your business? Will it add value for your business? So take a step back and view anything related to age domains as a means, just like you spend on traffic, on links, on pay-per-click, on content. You can also spend on age domains. For instance, as a domaining business, if I see any domain related to domaining, I will get it. I will take advantage of it. I will see, what was historically on the domain. I will try to reach out to the former owner. I will try to invite them, to maybe contribute. I will 201 redirect it into Odys. I will create a nice landing page, see if I can convert those visitors. So think about as deep as lead generation through domains. I've mentioned this during different podcasts that I've been invited to. We had a web designer, freelancer, buy a web design related domain. And what he did is he simply slapped his lead generation form and it started getting him leads even before it got crawled by Google. That because he was getting, referral traffic through leads. So there is lots of intrinsic value in highly valuable age domains. And, your listeners and viewers should take advantage of that. Think beyond the SEO, because if all the, let's say you want a 301 redirected in, if you do all the things right, you will move the needle. Those, green arrows can start eventually going up, but you should think value beyond rankings, because rankings will follow up, but what else can you get from the domain? And when you find a good match with your business, you will always be able to take it.
Perfect. And I think one perfect way for people to think about it is a bigger business. I guess you just gave the example also, but a bigger business that's acquiring competitors, which is a pretty normal thing in a mature industry. And they may acquire, some of their smaller competitors, 5 or 10 or, a lot of them over time. And that actually brings me to the bridge between like the SEO thing and the intrinsic value. So how many 301 redirects, we're getting advanced here. How many 301 redirects is, quote, too many? Can there be too many? Or is it just kind of a normal thing that might happen where, Amazon or Google might acquire, hundreds of companies, and it's not weird for them to have a lot of 301 redirects to manage that. So any guidelines on that?
Yeah, you've basically answered the question. Like if you're talking about Google or Amazon, I think they can get away perceived from an SEO perspective. Like Google itself won't penalize itself for 10,000 redirected domains. What if those 10,000 redirected domains actually are smaller companies that they bought over time? Now, I have a friend in Brazil. He's an excellent local SEO, and he's able to rank in weeks with just PBN links. And the way he gets away with that is by aggressively doing pay-per-click. So he will get the link velocity with a fresh new domain to such an extent, but he has to somehow compensate. Like Google will index those links, but at the same time, where are those links coming from? Like if it's a real business and it does all the other things, content, traffic, they're buying, they're doing all sorts of like video, YouTube, like, they have these trust signals, brand signals, they have a real address, then they will even reward the lower quality links. In other cases, if you just try to aggressively get links on 301 redirect 30 domains in a week, you most likely will trigger some penalties there because it's too aggressive. So the way I see it, like Odys.Global as a domain has around a dozen redirects in right now. But the way we see it, like we do not time it. We do not care about it. We simply see, like we have acquired Sean Markey's juicemarket.com, which is an attempt to build another age domain marketplace. Well, honestly, it didn't work out so well for them. So they decided to exit. We bought the domain. We also signed a partnership for half a year. Sean contributed to our blog. He wrote some extensive, in-depth domain analysis. So we ended up in a quite fruitful collaboration with Sean based on that acquisition. Also, if you go to juicemarket.com right now, it will lead to our marketplace. And occasionally we get new account request access mentioning we discovered you via Juice Market because they might have heard about Juice Market from Sean's interviews. They went to Juice Market. Now it redirects to Odys Global. And we have a couple more similar domains. So let's say we end up acquiring your business, right? And we at some point decide to integrate it within Odys because it doesn't make sense to keep it in a separate domain, right? So we'll do exactly the same. We'll just 301 redirected it. Is it too aggressive? I wouldn't say so. Why? Well, we operate as a legitimate business. We bought other companies, other businesses, other domains. We've positioned that as a legitimate course of action for our business. So even with affiliate websites or content websites, if you do all the things right, if you have the EAT and trust signals in place, if you do social, maybe you can even do it like Matt Diggity does it, by when you have a high converting page with organic traffic, why not run some paid traffic to it, kind of scale it. If you do all the things, I don't think that the volume of 301 redirects, there is an actual limit to that. I think there is an actual limit to how many domains in your niche you can actually find legitimate ones. Now, there is a limit, there is a constraint there, but with, worrying that Google will penalize you for doing this thing, I don't think it will happen if you treat your website as a business.
Man, I was going to say there's so many deep topics that we can go into. And I guess now you didn't ask me to do this, but you guys have a podcast over at Odys, right? So it's kind of fresher, kind of newer, but you guys go deep into the topics. Before we talk about our next section here, do you want to talk about the podcast just a tiny bit?
Yeah. So podcast is a recent initiative. I'd say doesn't yet have a year, but it's been very successful, I'd say, mainly because it helps with the relationship building. So you invite someone, you familiarize themselves with the company. And we've recently started to experiment with live streams as well beyond the podcast. I believe some businesses struggle to explain their vision, their mission, the problem they're solving. So the podcast is not just a mainstream thing that everyone is doing, just the ability to, properly deliver the message. And, that's a thing that we realized we have to do, and we're doing it.
Awesome. Yeah, so we'll link up and people could check that out. And then I'll also mention that I've interviewed Sean before, a good dude. He had a great story. So somewhere back in the archive, there's an interview with him. I think he sold something and it was an exciting story. So we chatted. So, all right, back into the outline here. So let's talk about assessing domains. So what metrics should people look at? What are the key things that someone should consider when they're looking at a domain?
Funny story. I was, browsing my Facebook feed and someone, I wouldn't mention the name, obviously, mentioned that they bought an expired domains from GoDaddy auction that had 8 million backlinks from 280 unique referring domains. And they bought it for like $350 or so. And they say, wow, what an awesome acquisition. And I've immediately commented and say, well, please do not redirect that to your clients. Please do not use this domain. That's an average of, 20,000 unique backlinks for every referring domain. So that's unnatural. And obviously what happened there, they got looped by the metrics. They saw 8 million links, and that's a big no-no. So what comes with that is that forget about metrics. The first thing that you should do, check the backlinks profile and see if there is any value in that. If the backlink profile is powered by a substantial amount of high authority backlinks and there is no abuse historically, then it's pretty nice to have some metrics. But if you can find at least a handful, like a dozen, of high authority links, that's a great domain. That's a great domain to have. If it has DR50, that's excellent. If it has DR25, that's great. But a domain with a very similar backlink profile can have a DR12. Well, maybe Ahrefs algo doesn't, take into account some links for some reason, but you still have the links there and they're indexed in Google and they might even have some trickle traffic. So think about, again, from an intrinsic value perspective and how much you'd have to spend on those that link if you had to outreach or buy them. That's the first thing. Everything else, like DR, we've stopped paying attention to some of the metrics from companies like Majestic and Moz, not because they're doing a bad job, but because that's a distraction and you may end up saying no to really great domains just because this is how they interpret certain metrics. And I just check the backlink profile and historically the abuse, if the domain was abused or not. I believe that's the most important thing. Obviously, the fact that it has 500 referring domains obviously is great, but that's not the first thing that I pay attention to.
How can someone verify or check if a domain has been abused? So what are the big red flags when you look?
Yeah. So first of all, most abused high quality, high authority abused domains, they aren't indexed in Google. And what we've noticed, even if they've been down for a very long time, highly authoritative domains that have thousands or hundreds of unique referring domains, Google still keeps them indexed. Because I think they believe there is value in showing that the business is offline or something happened. They keep that. So if you search for the brand, it's still indexed. So if the domain is not indexed, you may, deep dive into see what particular reason may be to that. Another thing is try Googling the brand. If you're, after a domain that has 8 million links and it doesn't rank for the brand, red flag. And there are another couple of checking the brand and then the TLD extension without the dot, some of those combinations, they may work out. Obviously, archive.org is your best friend. You should perform your due diligence there, making sure the domain hasn't been defaced, hasn't been repurposed. Even with defacing, sometimes any website can get hacked, right? But it doesn't mean that seriously affect if you take quick action and fix it. With blatant repurposing, now that's different. If your website would get hacked and suddenly you'd start serving, some shady content, that's a big no-no. Back in the days, Google will interpret that as this site has been hacked, and they would even show that in the SERPs. I think they don't show that anymore because they're able to assess faster and understand, but they still treat that and might, slap or penalize the website. And obviously, check the backlink profile. First thing, anchor text. Look at the anchor text. If you see any commercial anchor text in there, legitimate age domains that haven't been SEO'd by SEO companies, they have a super organic looking anchor text profile. Top keywords being the brand name dominating there. So if you see, buy links in there or any commercial keyword, that's a red flag. Again, I'm not saying the domain is not good, but that's a red flag. The last thing, obviously trademarks. You can find an excellent domain name that will start ranking in less than a week and then get a cease and dismiss letter from someone's legal team saying you cannot use this domain. So obviously pay attention to that as well.
Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one. Very good. So it sounds like there are some things you have to verify. So what tools do you use to, verify these things while you're assessing the domains?
Common sense research like using Google as said, site column, check how many pages indexed, if indexed, do a little bit of research into the brand. Is there any bad PR, maybe some scandals that have been, historically associated with this domain, any bad stuff, like really ugly stuff, shady, funky stuff there. That's the first thing. Then obviously check the backlink profile. If the backlink profile is really bad, don't even bother checking archive.org. So leave the time consuming stuff, which most of the time is the archive.org and trademarks. Or I'd rather start with a trademark. If the domain is the exact match active trademark, doesn't make sense to waste your time checking anything else. That's it. Just leave it. If the trademark is fine, check the backlink profile, check its index. If that's fine, look into archive.org. We obviously check all the tools, even though we rely most on Ahrefs, but we check all the tools. For instance, Majestic.com has this thing that Ahrefs doesn't, which is historical backlinks. So sometimes you may find some shady historical links that have meanwhile dropped, but there's maybe some risk associated with that former abuse, like link abuse, which you cannot see in other tools. So I believe from all the tools, we use all of them for different minor stuff just to make sure that we aren't missing anything. Recently, we've been starting checking if the domain is indexed in other search engines like Bing, for instance. Doesn't add much value, but sometimes you can see some spammy pages indexed in Bing, and those pages haven't been picked up by Google. So then you may try to figure out, well, it means the website might have been abused. It just Google ignored that abuse, but there's still something in it.
So let's say you go through all these points in your checklist, it checks out. Is there a way that you can verify if a domain has been penalized or blacklisted by Google? Is there any verification to do that?
Sometimes so let's say you try to sell me a domain and, the domain looks great, but it's not indexed. And I say, Doug, how much? And you say $500. I say, I wouldn't pay more than $100 because it's not indexed, right? So that I kind of take that risk on. So I kind of buy that risk as well. So sometimes we'd pay lower, a low amount for the domains that aren't indexed yet are somehow great. And then we try to get them indexed. So we, install a basic WordPress site, we add some content, we may even add them to the Google Search Console and just take it from there. Sometimes they, get indexed really quick and then it's our win. Some never get indexed. And then obviously that's a loss for us. We will never sell domains that never get indexed or, don't pass all our due diligence. So in some cases, the risks are hidden. So you either take the risk or you don't take the risk. So, but again, it starts with the trademark and then I'd deep dive into, is it indexed or not? Does it rank for the brand? Because there is no legitimate business out there with a domain that doesn't rank for the brand. If it doesn't, they did something shady and that has to be investigated.
Okay. Got it. And just for the people that don't know, luckily this has not happened to me, but let's say you do acquire that domain for the $100 and then you're doing some checking. From what I've heard, you could put it into Google Search Console and then you'll see the penalty will pop back up. Is that an accurate depiction of what might happen?
Well, if it's a manual penalty, it might get picked up by your new Google Search Console. But if it's in like algo penalty, if it's something that was triggered by, some content farm or some low quality content or some abuse, it might not be there. It might never be showed by Google in the Google Search Console. And then you need to figure it out what went wrong. So in some cases it helps. In other cases, it doesn't even make sense to add it to the Google Search Console if it doesn't get indexed really quick. And there are lots of ways to get the website indexed. In most cases, age domains get indexed really, really fast. Like with all those incoming links, you have spiders coming in from all those links. So the crawl budget, the crawlability is way higher than with new domains. So if quality age domain doesn't get indexed fast, that's already, a red flag that was taken.
Got it. Okay. Let's move on to acquiring the domain. So what are some best practices for getting an age domain? Feel free this will morph into talking about some of the marketplaces and, companies like Odys that vet and look and verify that, maybe it's not, there's no abuse that happened on these. So let's just say someone wants to check out some age domains. What are good places to go?
Well, obviously, biggest marketplace for expiring inventory. That's expiring inventory is GoDaddy Auction. Like they dominate the domain market and they dominate the aftermarket with all the companies that they own, like Afternic, Den.com as of recently, they acquired Den.com. So that is probably the best place to go if you want to try to, bet on getting some great domains at a low price. However, there are lots of hidden risks, and that's where marketplaces like ours come into place. First of all, pricing for domains has gone up really high recently. So in some cases, we're doing some research and the average price of a great domain in our marketplace may be lower than GoDaddy Auction. Why? Less hype. So auctions sometimes ends up, especially with great domains. And, as of recently, lots of SEOs, they start featuring these auctions on their Twitter, on Facebook. And guess what happens? It drags so much attention to that and pricing simply bubbles up. And that's not a good thing. When you have a buy now price in a marketplace and it stays fixed, you may be paying a premium, but, you're not doing the due diligence yourself. You actually pass on the risk to the company if you buy a domain from us. And it rarely happens. In fact, this year alone, it never happened. But if you buy a domain and you find let's say, a shady link there, say, Alex, well, you said those domains are legit. Guess what? We'll refund the money. We'll exchange the domain. We have skin in the game there. With GoDaddy, they don't care. They will sell you trademark domains. They will monetize all the inventory. So with the opportunity, you're also buying the risk, right? So it's a great place to start, but I'd still recommend, a marketplace. The way we've managed to find a space within the market is simply by giving buyers the peace of mind and saving them so much valuable time. Then we have other marketplaces like Collins, SEO.domains. They have a huge inventory. In their case, they're also not paying attention to things like trademarks or the fact that it's indexed or not. However, their main emphasis is on links and value and simply a huge inventory that you can find almost anything there. Again, some pros and cons. We focus on quality. We focus on websites you can build an actual brand on. They focus on anything that holds at least some SEO value. So mainly 301 redirects, building networks of websites for linking purposes. Our goals, so our intent was to legitimize the entire aftermarket and age domain. So it's not perceived as black hat or abusive. It's simply a reality of the aftermarket that online business owners can take advantage of by staying ethical and not abusing anyone. So domains are a reality. Age domains can be used, strategically in your business. There are other marketplaces, like NameJet, Snap Names, that again, you can go and try your luck with auctions, but all of them require this serious due diligence. Other marketplaces and competitor marketplaces like, SERP Names, SERP.domains, Domain Coasters, Sean Markey used to run Juice Market that we acquired. There are quite a few of them, and some of them are really good, but you have to understand what you are buying, really, because sometimes paying less means spending double later on because of some of the things. So good things seldom cost cheap. Let's put it this way.
Right. So a couple things. One, we had a slight audio issue earlier, but I think I just want to confirm one thing. Did you say GoDaddy acquired a specific company? I just missed what that was.
Yeah. They acquired Den.com. So a huge company from Netherlands, their website. So basically they're a marketplace where you can list any domain. So now I'm not sure if they bought any inventory, but they bought lots of companies, so they're the biggest player in the market. I'm not sure if even Google was forced to sell the other day their domains.google business for 160 million, I believe, to Squarespaces. Why? Because, domaining is a tough business to run. Margins are very low, especially for new registration, lots of customer support. So even Google, I'd say, couldn't handle the domaining business, so they were forced to sell. But nevertheless, GoDaddy is the biggest player still, especially for the aftermarket.
Got it. Okay. And I'm going to make a quick analogy for people, because I think if people look at marketplaces, then they look at the auctions and they may think, oh, I could save a lot of money. Well, one, you run into the hype cycle that you described, but the analogy that I'll make is for cameras. And I'm a camera guy, right? So yeah. I enjoy the lenses and all that stuff. And you could buy stuff on eBay, but you're kind of left up to whatever the person wants to put in the description. The pictures might not be accurate. Maybe there's a big scratch or a dent, and there's only so much due diligence you can do. You can't check things as well as a domain where there's a history that you can go verify. And there are some companies, one's called KEH, and it's actually out of Atlanta where I used to live. And I've bought used cameras from them for years and used lenses. And basically they go through, they make sure that the thing works. They have very accurate pictures. They tell you if it's, 70% out of 100 because there's a little dust inside there. But basically you could rely on that piece of equipment working just like they said, even if it's 30 years old. And if you have an issue, just like you said, if you have an issue with it, you could send it back and they'll refund the money, and they stand behind it because they've been doing this for a long time and they know what to check and they want to have repeat customers, right? So that's the thing. You can maybe get a cheaper deal on eBay for a lens, but maybe you have to buy 2 of those because you ended up with something that was busted and sort of misrepresented, which unfortunately has happened because I'm like, oh, okay, I'll buy this lens. Usually people don't kick their lens around and really beat it up unless they're like a pro and they're out in the field. But anyway, that's a good analogy there. So let's talk about the auction process. So let's say someone's a little more bold. Do you have any tips for like actually winning an auction that's out there?
Well, I can describe our entire process, but it requires all departments, a team, a business, lots of software, like some of which is software that is custom built. In order to find the gems within the auction, you should use some of the existing software on the market, like I believe Doug's Spamzilla.com. The founder, I think his name, as far as I remember, is also Doug. So, but even there, like it's his vision on how to perform due diligence. Some things might be missing, at least the way we do it. That's why we do it internally. So in order to find a really good opportunity, we have to go after the entire list. So let's say you are looking at domains, we have at least a DR of 5. Why? Because a DR5 domain will have at least a dozen or so links, among which you can find some good authority links. And you start by systematically checking the list that's expiring tomorrow, let's say with GoDaddy auction, that can be a 10,000 domain list, right? So, and you cannot manually check the DR. So you have to use the, Ahrefs or Majestic API. Those API credits cost money. I'm not saying you can not just cherry pick domains from GoDaddy auctions, but it's like, it's like mining for gold. Same approach. You just have to process lots and lots of batches of whatever, right? And in this case, you have just go through all the domains. So we have a team around 5 people that each goes through around several hundred domains each and every day. Then their manager picks the one that have passed their due diligence. So they do all the checks. And then we have another person that, checks for trademarks and checks for all the risk and sees if there is any demand for those domains in the first place, because you may be buying domains that there is no demand for, or the name is very funky, so to speak. And, it takes time. And most importantly, you don't want to miss, because sometimes you may say, well, I can see this closeout at GoDaddy auction for just $12 and it has 8 million links. That has to be a great deal, but in fact, you're missing something. So, and another tip, like if you're really aggressive and you want to take your chance with a great domain, a tip I'd give beginners is look at the most expensive auction, because obviously if there is demand, there is something good about it. Well, at least the chance, if the price is very low, it means everyone is staying away from that auction. Even if you've checked it with SEO tools and you see there are lots of backlinks there, the fact that like H domain has become so popular that if you see that there is no demand, no bids, someone has done their due diligence and there is no demand. It's really not worth taking into account. And the other approach is just check the domain with the highest bids. If you want to find a great domain with low bids, you have to do the process that I described. You actually need a team that does this. And we have days when we're not buying anything. Why? Because like I could have bought that domain, but I don't want to spend $20,000 on a domain name, because that's obviously hyped up by, bloggers and the fact that GoDaddy Auctions, for instance, is public. There are other companies that we buy from or regularly check the inventory. So it has to be systematically done. Another thing is I can be luckier with a domain on the Christmas Eve, for instance, when everyone else is, just enjoying the dinner with their family, but I have a system in place that just runs. And the same domain on just any other day can be $5,000. On the Christmas Eve, I can get lucky and get it for $500. So there are sacrifices which you have to make to get the really good inventory if you go straight to the source, so to speak. Whereas with marketplaces, you can just, buy it for a buy now price. That's the main thing. Saving time and, let's say, outsourcing risk.
Right. And it just makes me think, like if I wanted to go check out an auction, I have to remember that I'm competing against you and your team and all the hundreds of other people that are doing a similar thing that are experts in the industry. They have the systems where I would be fumbling around, not really understanding how to, manage all the information and make a bid that I could actually get a good ROI on. Okay.
Yep.
So let's move on to some of the details within Odys. So we've been talking about just age domains, but there's some other things that you guys have recently added in there. Can you go over those?
Yep. So our new marketplace also supports premium names, just great names. Obviously, we're extremely picky with those, and also websites. Why? Well, let's say you have a starter website. You decided, to build it on the same age domain. Maybe you got it from us or you bought it on your own. And now you have this asset that's a website built on a great domain and you want to list it for sale. Obviously, you might be interested in the, just the domain sale value, but we'll say, well, it has 5 pages or 15 pages. Why not leave those on? First of all, leaving those on, especially for SEOs, adds, additional value. Well, there is value in buying a site versus just a domain. Plus, potential buyers won't have so many questions like, why did they give up on the site? When you tell them, well, they just want to exit the website because they want to focus on something else. Well, with the website, with the sale, then it makes sense. Whereas if they delete the website and just serve the domain, then they may start being suspicious. Look, there might have been some kind of penalty or, there was something wrong with the website, in which case we kind of solve the problem. With premium names, look, we put so much emphasis into building high quality relationships with our customers. Sometimes you may buy an age domain from us and then you can come back to us and say, look, I really want a great name. I have this startup idea. Can you help me get one? In which case we realize if we have some just premium names inventory, they'd rather buy from us because they've done business with us. They trust already instead of going to other marketplaces and just dealing with people that they don't trust. They don't know if they're paying, a hefty price, like maybe an exaggerated price. So we thought adding, diversifying inventory with premium names and websites besides age domain will help everyone out.
Okay. And for the sites that have content, basically, someone selling a website, what value is placed on either the content or, some of the sites may be earning a little bit of money, right? So how do you deal with the valuation of those when you think about maybe Empire Flippers or other brokers that are in the same space for that kind of product?
So we evaluate the domain only because we're a domains marketplace. But sometimes the domain alone can be more valuable than whatever the site makes multiplied by the market average. That's why we've recently experienced a really interesting phenomenon where people list their money-making websites. And it doesn't make $2,000 a month, something that Empire Flippers would accept. It may be $50 a month, $150 a month. So those startup sites that get some traction, make some money, but at the domain valuation, assuming it is on a high value domain name, it can be sold for more. So the way it works, you'd list a website and let's say the website has content and the website has, links and traffic and maybe earning some money. And if we see that it's on a great domain, let's say it's Doug.com, well, we'll evaluate and we'll assess it and we'll say, well, Doug.com is worth at least $50,000 as a domain name. And this will potentially get you more than selling it as a money-making website, making $150 to $100 a month. In some other cases, the domain evaluation is lower than the multiple for the website, in which case you can say, well, that's lower than I want to receive. And then we give you the freedom. Well, you can list it for more. Obviously, we'll describe that it has traffic, rankings, making some money, but you shouldn't expect a fast sale. That's because on a large scale of things, it's still perceived as a domain marketplace, and they buy domains. So we will evaluate the domain in some cases if it makes sense to be sold for more as a domain.
Okay, cool. And are those noted specifically in the Odys filtering, or how does someone find those sites that already have content?
Yeah, the new user interface is really, really straightforward. In the left nav menu or filters menu, you have like types, and there are 3 types: age domains, premium names, and websites. So you click on those and they will immediately feature those that are tagged with websites or premium names. So one click on the websites type of inventory will give you, we have around, I believe, 30 or 40 sites right now listed for sale. So that will get you the websites right away.
Perfect. Okay. Well, as we're winding down here, I think you covered a lot of the mistakes that people might make. But if you could just rank maybe like the top 3 mistakes that people make when they are either acquiring or using an age domain.
So as said, the biggest trouble you can get into is trademark-related legal trouble. The worst thing is, so you can own a trademark domain, but you don't have the right to use it. Especially, like, you can use it for a different purpose. Let's say I buy Doug.Show and I use it for a completely different thing than internet marketing. But if you accidentally let go of the domain, I buy Doug.Show, and I use it for exactly the same type of business, then most likely you'll sue me. You'll say, look, not only you got my domain, you're also impersonating me. So that can get you in really big trouble. Obviously, pay lots of attention to trademarks and pay lots of attention to impersonating someone, even if accidentally, because there is always this incentive that by somehow recreating the old content, you can get better rankings faster. Not necessarily the case. Why? Because historically websites haven't been properly optimized for Google. So if you simply bring the old site back to life, it won't mean a lot in the current state of Google. So even though you really want to recreate or rebuild some of the former content, first of all, it's not yours. You own only the domain. Come up with similar content, slightly repurpose it, but properly optimize, build some topic cluster, optimize it for SEO, speed optimize it, do all the things right. And that will bring much more value than trying to just, shortcut your way to faster rankings by taking advantage of the old site. So even though we might help you rebuild a former website, just as a service, maybe you lost your server files, right? As a service, I do not recommend taking advantage of someone else's work. So, because it can fire up negatively later. Obviously, take a look at the backlink profile. Like, there are so many people who just buy based on metrics, and I believe that's still a common mistake. So trademarks, make sure you put some effort into creating great content, properly optimize it for Google. Think topic clusters, think topical authority, and obviously avoid buying solely based on metrics. Check the backlink profile and the anchor text. You want to buy domains which have harnessed legitimate links, not artificial ones, not guest posts, not PBNs, not any other type of links that have been paid for.
And finally, where do you see the future going with age domains? So Google's always changing up the algorithm, shifting. We have AI in play right now. So yeah, maybe like the next 12 to 18 months or so, kind of short term, and maybe like long term, anywhere you see the market going.
I don't think AI knows when it's wrong. So I have a daughter, right? And if she suddenly starts coughing really bad, I'll probably go and follow an expert's advice on coughing. I wouldn't trust just some random snippet from Google. Usually, the expert's advice is associated with a brand, and the brand is associated with a domain name. So I still believe brands strongly impact how people trust especially information online, or the way they actually interact with information or follow someone's advice. So I wouldn't trust just, let's say, create snippet from someone's website, even if they're referenced. I want to make sure that I'm reading the original source. So my prediction in regards to how age domains and domains in general, because an age domain is a domain. The only difference is, that it has historical records, like TransferWise rebranded to Wise.com. Wise.com is an age domain, but they wouldn't care. They went after the name. So brands are still huge. And I believe there's going to be much more emphasis on not only age domains, but age domains with great names. That's basically where the premium age domains came from. And as a matter of fact, I believe, we've personally spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on educating people on not only buying domains for the sake of the backlink value, but also the name value, because you can build a brand on it. If you build a website under a low quality name, guess what? The value of the business goes down when you try to exit it via flippers, let's say. If it's built on an actual brandable.com domain, well, obviously you can charge more right away because it's so cool, right? So with domains, I believe domains aren't going anywhere anytime soon, regardless of how easy it's going to be finding and stumbling upon, tips and advice and information. You still financial advice, especially in your money or life niches, financial health advice. Experts aren't going anywhere. In fact, Google has to feed those snippets, and even AI has to feed itself from somewhere. And that's content that you as a creator put on the web. So yeah, I think brands and domain names aren't going anywhere anytime soon.
All right. This has been amazing. We do need to wrap up, but is there anything that I forgot to ask you that you want to mention before we let people know where to find you and everything? But anything that I forgot?
Well, not really. Again, I would like to emphasize the fact that age domains aren't an SEO trick or an SEO hack to rank faster. They're a reality, just like, your neighbor's business going out of business or going bankrupt, and you using his assets, his space, his real estate, whatever you can get out of what's left. Age domains are a reality, and think about it as a means to grow your business, not just as a means to, rank faster by, one redirect or anything. All those things, they do apply, but treat it as a business. Treat the entire process of buying topically relevant age domain as a means to grow your business. Just like you mentioned, in the real world, companies that end up growing faster, they swallow the other company, they buy, they merge. It happens regularly. So treat the process of buying relevant domain names with intrinsic value as part of a business growth. Stop viewing it simply an SEO trick to rank faster. And I can guarantee there is so much value beyond the fact that you will start seeing those green arrows in your rank tracker going up.
Perfect. So if people want to check out the Odys Marketplace, what should they do? Where do they go?
So they can go to Odys.Global, obviously request access. Highly recommend they write something that makes sense when requesting access. The first thing, we ask for two things. Where did you hear about Odys and why you want to join? If they heard about Odys on this podcast, they should write it down. Why? It will expedite the approval process. We don't want to deal with just anyone. We want to deal with people that we are able to help reach their goals, pick up the right domains, and just, provide all the means necessary for them to take it further. We'd rather deal with someone who will return for more domains based on the results they got from us rather than one-time buyers who never come. So that's why we don't want just to let anyone in. Second of all, reach out to us if you need any help. We've started with around 50 domains, 7 years ago. Right now we have more than 1,000. And since we've launched the Sell Your Domains initiative, we have around 40 to 50 new domains each week. So I do recommend you reach out and ask for someone's advice. We have the Mentors Initiative. We have a team of mentors that is able to help within the ranks of our community that have bought domains, built websites. They know how to tackle this. So they'd help you pick a great name. Sometimes you can get lured by high metrics, but it's not relevant. It won't work out. Sometimes you will get lured by the fact, or you will get demotivated by the fact that you can't find a specific niche, like very specific one, where in reality you can get away with a broader niche, depending, and some creative way to repurpose content, use it that's why, like we built the marketplace so you can buy the domain if it's like 3 a.m. and everyone else is sleeping. But nowadays, we still recommend you reach out if you have any doubts or question. We have an entire team in place ready to help you out, pick the right names and get the most stuff.
Cool. And a quick plug for Kyle, right? Kyle Claver is on the experts team. He's been on the show at least a couple times. I can't remember all the times. There's too many shows, but most recently on episode 449. So Kyle's one of the experts that you can work with at Odys. So, and by the way, this, I'm an affiliate for Odys, but this is not like a sponsored spot. Like we just needed to catch up, Alex. So, all right, man. Well, are you anywhere else? Are you on Twitter? Do you want people to follow you at such places or just check out the marketplace? And, there's a way to ask questions, all the things that you mentioned before. But are you out there anywhere on social?
Yeah, I'm almost everywhere. Not that active, but I'm also almost everywhere. I believe my username is Alex Odys Global, just everywhere. When I started the company, I've actually registered this profile and this username on all platforms. So with Alex Odys Global on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. I believe even on Reddit, like they can find me almost anywhere. Like I'm available. I have my DMs open. I'm eager to help, jump on strategy calls. I still like talking to people and helping them out, regardless of the position, how much the business overall has grown.
Awesome. Very cool. It's been a blast. We'll link up to all this stuff so people can check it out and we'll catch up soon. Thanks, man.
Cheers, Doug. Thanks for having me.